Kris Hardy, welcome to my 10-minute conversation. Thank you so much for joining.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Kris and I go way back. She is a Wharton alum, a BCG alum, and then has had a really significant and long career as a expert technology product portfolio consultant and executive, as well as a go-to-market, a deep go-to-market executive. She's worked with companies like Dell, Microsoft, Lenovo, you name your big company. Kris has been there, and she's had a lot of great experience. She also has a very interesting life on the side. She has a boy, 3 girls. She had a coffee shop business, and I think is probably a triathlete or something crazy like that. So welcome, Kris. Thank you for always being such a great example. How'd be amazing. I always look at you and be like, oh yeah, Kris wouldn't do it that way.
WWKD.
So you and I have had a side conversation before this, but I think there's a common thing that we've both encountered in our careers with enterprise technology, and that is the fact that every 4 to 7 years, there is a dramatic market shift and the conversation of what needs to be done changes. So we've been through omni-channel. We, in fact, had parallel roles at Dell once where we were entering the omni-channel. We've done X as a service. We are now doing AI. You mentioned, what are the other ones we've been through?
Well, there was COVID, an unforeseen one. I think that was probably the biggest one recently.
IoT, the Internet of Things. Who could forget
I thought
that?
You said that one, yeah.
I think at some point we may both have touched .com in its first iteration. So,
oh, that dates us, girl. I don't know.
I know, well, you more than me. Okay, so the commonality, though, I think, in each of these market cycles, as a product portfolio or go-to-market leader, it presents the opportunity for a refresh, right? Companies are having to adapt and really think about, is the portfolio that they have ready for what the market is asking them to do? And I know you've done a lot of work in this area. So what in your mind are the signs when you come into a product organization or a go-to-market organization? What are the signs that you're looking for to say, you know what, I think a refresh cycle on what's on the truck is needed?
To me, there's probably 2 key things. One is the financial profile, in particular, the growth profile. So if you take out seasonality and you look at the data and it says that your growth is flattening, especially relative to competitors, it's a big signal that what you're currently selling isn't working, right? The second is something that I think I often see as a blind spot, and that is customer insight. So voice of customer panels, any research, like that stuff should be on a regular cadence. And those forums are your canary in the mine shaft. They're the ones that are really telling you what you're giving me isn't really servicing my needs. Like there are these big gaps. And if we were to address those gaps, it would mean a different product, and hence the portfolio evolution.
Do you find that customers or your clients have the regular rhythms where they're looking at that data? Or is this something that's prompted by a disruption or a blip in the financials?
You know, I honestly feel like it is not regular. It's not regular enough. I find especially the larger the organization is, they tend to have siloed research arms and siloed voice of customer organizations that go about beating their steady drumbeat, but it's disconnected from the product teams themselves. The product teams, I feel like, can very often just get caught up in the flow of their project management requirements and executive reviews along that, and they're not doing the regular strategic reviews. It's the rare instance that I've found it's a regular thing.
Do you find that they, like, even if you broke this problem apart, it's like, by the way, I see the exact same thing, right? Like, you don't see a part of a quarterly ROV unless you're in CPG to look at customer insights. Like, I've never seen it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would say another huge blind spot and another indicator that you need to change is your competitors. And,
okay, say more.
And customers are very often saying, I think they know the problem, right? Like, we know we eat too many carbs. Like, we know that we aren't looking at our competitors, and we need to do more of that outside in. But again, it's not resourced. It's not part of any regular cadence. But competitors, and really understanding who your competitors are in a creative way, i.e. understanding who your competitors are from your customer standpoint, and looking at what they're doing and looking at where they're investing and trying to forecast where they're going is critical to understanding when and how often you're going to need to evolve your product portfolio.
Yeah. So the lack of resourcing, the lack of, honestly, like the lack of resourcing for this type of work to me is always a little bit surprising, because you would think, right? Like everyone, you ask anybody this question, they're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, you need to know what's going on in the market. Well, like, how do you know what's going on in the market unless there's someone whose job is to know?
Right. No, it's usually like the fourth bullet point in the roles and responsibilities description for the technology person. And true, I mean, the technology person should be spending a lot of time there, but quite often the technology person is spending more time project managing and more time catching up with understanding what the technology is doing and the use cases to apply it, right? And it doesn't leave them time to do the competitive.
Okay, so when you say technology person, you mean like the person who, tell me who that is in the team.
So on a product development team, it's usually like the engineer, the technical product manager. It's the person. Like if you're going to design a portfolio, the first person you need is the person that understands what is being built and how to, they're the ones that synthesize the customer requirements into the business requirement document and send that off to the engineering team to build things to get on the truck. So it's that synthesis person.
Yeah, and that person's job is to synthesize, not to find insights. Those are completely, they're inside looking. They need that other partner. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, if you're going to do it well, I mean, they tend to be the ones that are assigned the competitive tasks. And they do a kind of cursory analysis because they can maybe dedicate 2 hours a quarter to it.
You know what's interesting too? There are industry groups that they'll provide research. There's Gartner, let's call Gartner out. IDC is another one that does it in consumer. We've got TSIA, which is another technology focused industry organization that sells a lot of research. They're not giving, I mean, like, I know our clients buy that research. I rarely see anything coming out in their generally published reports that's useful enough to that technology manager.
No, exactly. Like those reports are, to me, really good at the high level with like, hey, omnichannel is important and IoT is important. Like, okay, got it.
They're spending more on. Yeah, okay, great, Einstein. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Precisely.
Okay, if you were, let's say tomorrow you woke up and you decided you wanted a full-time job as an executive leading a technology product organization, and you had unlimited budget, okay, how would you structure this function for your team?
Well, so obviously you have the technology person, the technology synthesis person. I would then, and you need a project manager person, which ideally is different from, but oftentimes it's the same. You need a function that is data analytics. I very often I see one poor soul that's shared across 5 teams, and I've never seen a piece of analysis that doesn't beget 5 more questions and pieces of analysis. So that poor person is just all day, pivot tables, and honestly 90% of the time looking for the data. So I think they really need a person. I would want somebody on my team that I could call up and ask any question and have it answered without having to wait 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So those 2 pieces. And then I would have this insights person. I would have somebody who's wholly dedicated to research, customer research, competitive analysis, because it takes a lot of time to do that well. Like they would be fielding surveys, they would be fielding focus groups, they would be doing customer visits. Like their schedule would mirror a little bit of the executive, right?
Yeah.
The executive is out there visiting customers and they see something in a customer and then they're like, what is going on? And then they call you and like, we need to change this, right? And then you get these like fire drills that are potentially off strategy, right? But if you had your customer insight person with real data to address those calls from the executive, then you can very quickly like reduce a lot of the inefficiency in the org.
Yeah, no, I think, okay, so there's the nugget. I think the nugget is the insights person has to also be customer facing.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Totally agree.
There is no business I have ever been involved in that wouldn't benefit from earlier and more frequent customer insight. Like,
yeah,
so many startups would really benefit from early customer insight. I was working for an accelerator once as a consultant, coach for one of their ideas. And the one thing I really loved about this accelerator was they were huge proponents of like, how can we test this today? Like, can we just throw up a website and see how many people come, and put 2 options on the website and see which one they prefer? Like, there is nothing, like once somebody clicks on that button, there's nothing behind it. Yeah. But at least you're very quickly getting feedback.
You know what okay, so that works for small, nimble companies who aren't afraid of their customers. Okay, that's a big one. For enterprises who are scared to shake the tree, maybe this is what it could look like. It can be that customer insights person. By the way, I don't think they need to be that senior. I think they just need to be wicked smart. Like, but they need to be side by side and dotted line to the sales team. I think they've got to be the top 5 account owners' best friend and be required to go on a customer visit with them at least once a quarter.
Yeah, I honestly it should be like once a week. That you bring up a good point. In that the closest proxy to customer input is the product team's connection with sales, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like very often that is also missing. Because the salespeople are always in contact with the
Oh
customer,
yeah,
right? The sales team are always knowing what is and isn't working.
yeah.
So, and that should be a critical piece of that insight job as well.
I'm gonna throw a name we both know out here, and I'll tag him in this video. It's Ankit Javeri.
Yeah.
So Ankit, we both worked at Dell Technologies. Ankit was the sales rep for, I think it was Costco at the time I worked with him, but I know we had a lot of coverage. I went with Ankit to Costco, and I learned more in that 45 minutes than I learned in the past year. And that includes every interaction. And we had like ethnographic research at Dell. Like we had projects because we were working in
Yeah.
consumer. 45 minutes, and then he took me to Amazon, and I was like whiplashed by that crew. And then we went to the service team, and we were, but like that day was so eye-opening for me. And I think if I look back on it, like if I could have put my, maybe even it's my other BI guy, but like someone who is 7 years out of college, who's super smart, put them in that job to go be the eyes and ears, so that, because there's no way like the product lead can do that. I think that would have been super helpful. So no, but you're right. I think the nugget here is the sales team is your, in the absence of all else, the sales team is your greatest connection. How, okay, I was going to ask you a different question, but I'm going to ask you something. I'm going to take this in a different way. Um, Lots of times there's friction between product and sales to the point where they truly don't get along or like each other. So in order for this model to work, they must have a tight bond. How do you build that bond?
Oh, yeah.
I
I
know
mean,
you can do it, so that's
you
why I asked the
can, right?
question.
Well, I think understanding the root cause of why there is friction, I think, and excuse me, any dynamic like that to me is one that's suffering from transparency. It's one that's suffering from, contact with the enemy, as it were, walking in their shoes, truly having compassion for
Mm-hmm.
that person and understanding the position that they're in every day and their struggles and feeling attached to those in a way like, I want to help you. You have
Yeah.
to have that mindset, right? So first off, I mean, you kind of need the right sort of human that's going to want to have compassion and help people, and which isn't everybody, I should say. But assuming you have that raw material in place, I think the path to building those bonds is, contact. You just need to reach out. You need to be curious. There's the tagline, don't be furious, be curious. If there's
Oh, that's great.
anything
Yeah.
that you find irritating about them, use that as your guide of where to start asking questions. And in absence of establishing that bond early and well, means that the salespeople are always going to use you as an excuse. And if it's not
Yes.
you, it's the marketing team, right? The products you're giving me are crap, and the way that you're selling them isn't working, and that's why I can't meet my quota. And it's really hard to argue that. It's like arguing with teenagers. Um, so yeah, I would, as a product person, get meetings with them, not just meetings like video meetings, but if you can have those off the record meetings, if you can do a sales call with them, if you can really communicate your interest in understanding their life, their world, their customers, and what is going to make them successful, and orient yourself to that and prove, once you get that information, then you have to follow up, right? And prove that you're doing stuff that aligns there and ideate with them. And,
Yeah.
all of those motions that we do with our friends who come to us with problems.
Yeah. So furious, not curious, not furious.
Yes.
Compassion. I'll say, you said in their shoes. I'll use the word empathy.
Yeah.
Um, and living a day in their life. I think it is the responsibility of the product person to do this, not the salesperson. I always have thought, I'm a bit of a emotional robot, and so I have a process to do this with people, which is I just tell myself, like, I need to take them to lunch three times. I got to take them to lunch 3 times. I've got to ask them all about themselves, get to know them as a person. Once I get to that second lunch, by the third lunch, we're friends, right? Like we want to go to lunch together. And like that bond opens the door for the harder conversations. But curious, not furious. That's so good. Gosh,
Yeah.
you're right.
I would say, but not everybody wants to be friends. But I would assume a salesperson would be a pretty, like, they should be a
sales-
gregarious personality.
Here's what I learned. The salesperson wants a friend.
Yeah, that's true.
Their job is
I think that's a good takeaway.
they do. They're like, I'm married to one. I think you might be. They are so, like, I truly believe, like, to be good at, they have to be empathetic with their customers, right? So I think innately they must have that capability, and they have a need for that. And as the product person who may not need that recognition, I don't know, that's been useful for me. So
yeah, I think that's insightful.
well, thank you, Kris. This was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing your insight with us. I really appreciate it.
Fascinating as always, Lauren. Thank you.